I'm generally working with folks who clearly understand what they need to do, but they don't know how to do it. A leader creates and sustains the belief in somebody that they can do something until they can sustain that belief themselves.
You're setting it off in the right direction versus letting everyone try to figure out what the direction is. That's good leadership at the top.
Information is power. So how about we empower our people?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. You are listening to the Real MF'ers podcast. I am Scott Pieper, the CEO and co-founder of Mobilization Funding. With me today, I have a great guest, someone that is very popular on all different social channels, has been in and around the construction world for the better part of almost 3 decades now. We met on LinkedIn specifically. I loved his content, and so much so that I just wanted to bring him here on our podcast so I can help share with you guys some of the nuggets and wisdom that I've been able to pull from him, and I know some of our clients have too. So Wally Adamchik, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. Yeah. Adamchik guy. He is the president of FireStarter Speaking and Consulting, and you can find him at constructionleadership.com, amongst also finding him on LinkedIn where I did. So Wally, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks. I'm grateful for the opportunity to officially be an MF'er. So yes. Happy to be here.
You are now officially an MF'er. Maybe not the MF'er that you're typically called.
Exactly right. I've been unofficially one for years. Just ask my wife. But anyway, good stuff.
Well, I've loved your content on LinkedIn, particularly some of your videos. What I like most about it is you're interesting. You know, I mean, that's the best part about it, candidly. You have topics that everyone loves, and who doesn't want to talk about culture and being a good leader and doing the things that need to be done. But what I really appreciate about you is you're interesting in communicating with them. And in the process of doing that, you captivate the audience. Now, I haven't been part of your individual consulting or some of the seminars you do, but talk to me a little bit about how you got into construction. Where'd your passions come from, and how'd you end up doing this for 25 plus years?
Yeah, well, it really goes back more than 25 years. My dad and brother were Teamsters working in the trades in New York City. So, and he was a general superintendent by that time. My brother, don't know if he was running work, but he certainly did, got into it very quickly. But I remember being 13 years old, working on jobs in New York City as a helper, running out in the middle of the Bronx to go get, coffee breaks and of course, all the menial work. So, when I hang out with construction people, these are my people, right? It's as if I'm with family. And I think they get that, right? I'm not some guy with an MBA. I'm part of the family who has an opinion that may be relevant.
Yeah, I get that. I think the term I used to call the job that you described, which I also had, I was called the gopher boy. Go for this, go for that, go get that out of the truck. I forgot this, go for this, go get us coffee, go get whatever. I was just doing whatever it took. With a group, my dad had a commercial contracting and glazing company, which you may know I've talked about many times before, but I used to peel, this is back when you made your own insulated glass with the hot tar. So I'd be in the fabrication shop doing that. And then once we'd bring them out to the site, I had to peel all the little stickers off and kind of get them ready and prep them, and then get to just clean everything really well. I mean, I had some of the worst jobs, and it was in upstate New York, which is freezing cold. And so I get it. You're right, but you build a cadence and a habit to who you're with, and it comes across. That makes perfect sense to me. How did you pivot that though into saying, all right, cool, I want to do it in a consulting way? Like, why didn't you follow suit and just stay right on the job sites?
Well, I was the product of the American dream, right? I mean, I went to college, which my dad obviously didn't. Well, not obviously, but he was volunteered for World War II in Korea and got into construction. My brother tried it a little bit, but it didn't work out for him. So, like I said, I was the American dream in that, my parents made it better for me than it was for them. So I went to college, graduated from Notre Dame, but couldn't pay for it. So commissioned in the Marine Corps, ROTC, went and did that for 10 years. And oh, by the way, there's a lot of applicability to what we do in the Marine Corps to what we do in construction with the nature of leadership, distributed workforce, out in the field, equipment, etc. So that entire piece of my life, once again, makes me directly relevant to what's going on in the industry. Got out while I was getting my MBA. When I worked for Arby's restaurants for a couple of years. I was a regional manager. Now, once again, P&L responsibility, understanding the business, understanding growing a business. The fast track back into construction was I spent a little bit of time with FMI. Many of your listeners would know them as management consultants to the construction industry. Good bunch of guys, still a good bunch of guys. We had some philosophical differences in addition to my wife giving me the ultimatum that said, you're traveling way too much. So that was the impetus to start the business 20 something years ago, was the ultimatum, but it's been a good ride since then.
That's cool, man. I think, when did you think about how you'd help engage the construction world to solve the problem of not traveling as much? Did it come to you right away? Hey, I'm just going to do consulting, or I'm going to not have to travel. I'll do this. Or just one other ideas of things you wanted to.
Well, there were three. When during that fateful dinner with my wife, we had three basic choices. Right, I had three basic choices. One was continue what I'm doing and get divorced. Yeah, not good option at that time. Still not. Go get a real job, whatever the hell that looks like, right? 9 to 5 or whatever the heck that was. And then, go back in the Marines. Now, clearly that wasn't as good an option. And then it was like, wait a second, maybe I could do this on my own. And again, worked through some things and was really fortunate enough to get some clients early on. And I'm proud to say they're still clients.
That's awesome. So you start FireStarter, and that's what you started, right? That was it?
Yep.
And what was your focus on then when you originally started? Like, what did, you and I had some conversations prior, and I understand and hear from you you're a problem solver, and so you got into consulting and you went in to solve a problem.
Well, I would call myself, I was a trainer, right? I would come in and train on like whatever you wanted me to train on, right? Because I was starting a business and I said yes to a lot of stupid things. Like many of your LinkedIn posts that talk about some of the stupid things you guys have done. Yours just cost you a hell of a lot of money when you do them, right? Yeah. But I was with my people, trying to deliver, information that was relevant to them. And what it evolved into was leadership development. Now that's a big umbrella. Underneath that is communication skills, change management, supervision, morale, leadership, motivation, et cetera. But it's all really around leadership development. And that involves into some culture and stuff like that.
Nice. So let's talk on that topic for a minute. So I'm a construction owner. I'm listening to this. I'm in all different types of trades or different avenues that might even support construction. And quite frankly, we have a lot of clients and listeners that aren't in construction, but there's still leadership and culture is an important thing. Talk to me about your philosophy in leadership and culture. And as if you are a business owner in construction, how do you cater to them specifically so that they can understand, like, why is that important? Is it just do your job, or is it more to that? What is it? Like, tactically, how do you build a culture? How do you be a good leader? Like, why do you do that? Why is that?
Yeah. So you asked me two questions there. One was philosophy, and then, all the rest of that. I wish I could tell you my philosophy is X, because I think it evolves every couple of years, but I think it's always been, don't be a jerk. If I look back at some of my writing over the years, just don't be a jerk, right? What are you doing now leadership, two kinds, right? Interpersonal and organizational, right? So obviously they're totally related, but as we talk about interpersonal leadership, don't be a jerk. And when I really get down to it, what are you doing? How are you behaving? How are you engaging people so that they will, quote, take the bullet for you, right? That they will show up early, stay late, double check the quality, and actually care. Yeah. I think if leadership is working, we create people who care. Now, Context, construction industry. What does that look like? Because leadership is leadership. Yeah, to a point. We have to understand the context. And the first context we have to understand is personalities. Or one of the first contexts we have to understand is personalities, that this is a task-oriented, get-her-done industry, right? If we look at the DISC profile, which many people are familiar with, and there's task versus people orientation, and we've done nearly 20,000 DISCs over the last 25 years or so. So I'm very comfortable in what I'm about to say, that when you step into a room of construction professionals, you depending on the balance of field and office and stuff like that, but let's go with 70% of the folks in that room, plus or minus, are task oriented, meaning they're hardwired to get the thing done. That's wonderful, except they're hardwired not to tend to the relationship first, right? So if I'm talking about how do we create trust and how do I get people to take the bullet for me, well, the relationship part really matters, right? So you have to understand that context. If I walk into an organization and say, hey, it's all about, apple pie and teddy bears and, all that stuff, I'll get shown the door, right? This is a low margin, bottom line focused, schedule driven industry. And if my solutions don't appeal to that person, I fail. More importantly, they fail. And I think that's the real issue. So understanding the people context. The other thing you understand in me delivering what I do well is you have to understand the context of that specific business. Is it a $50 million company, and if we bring in every superintendent, we shut them down for a day? Is it a $1 billion company within Atlanta, for example, where we can do leadership development like once a month for 5 months? Or is it a $5 billion company where we can bring people into a common geography for 5 days? Or maybe we have to bring them in to the common geography for 5 days because they're distributed otherwise. If we don't understand, and by the way, virtual has enabled some other cool things, but if we don't understand that, if I don't understand that, and if I don't tailor my offering to that specific context of that organization, I failed. And way too many consultants, that's exactly what they do. They come in with their textbook answer. The only thing they do is change the PowerPoints from, my company to your, company A to company B, and they deliver the exact same content, good content, but not tailored content. And there are nuances across the trades. There's nuances across union merit, non-union, whatever. There's nuances across geography. I actually saw a new consultant to the industry a year or two ago come out and say, could somebody explain the difference between union and non-union to me? And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? But those are the pretenders that are out there. And regrettably, you and I have to deal with them all the time because they give all of us a bad name.
Yeah, they do. And you generalize. And of course, people, and rightfully so, their experience, past especially, is going to carry weight on what they think about the rest of the world, the rest of the people in that trade. And so it's very important to differentiate yourself, which is why I think it's important doing things like this or having a great LinkedIn profile so you can differentiate yourself versus just having to do it in a live call.
Right.
So getting to something you said, and I want to make this tactical for our listeners. So I'm a construction business owner. I'm thinking, consulting's great. I don't know if I can't shut the world down. How do I know? Yes, of course I want to be a good leader. Yes, of course I want to have a great culture. But here's what's happening. I've learned in the construction world a lot of times, similar to others, usually you are already feeling some type of pain or managing some type of problem that you then ultimately are like, oh, I need a solution, right? And of course, that's not the ideal time to bring you in, but that's when you come in, okay? So let's just assume that's the case. What are the problems, if I'm a business owner right now, that I'm experiencing, or what pain am I feeling to whereas, okay, man, I should be looking to Wally to bring in now to help me fix this versus just suffer through it like I normally do?
Yeah, well, there's a number of pains, obviously, but the one that I'm going to get involved in today is turnover and retention, right? Now that extends to safety, quality, production, et cetera. But when you really get down to it, what did I see the other day? The home builder said 750,000 people needed. Turnover, I'm losing folks. Retention, I'm not keeping who I have.
Yeah. And so what do you do in those instances? Like, what is the fix? What's the solution?
Well, really depends on the organization. Like you, there's a good bit of due diligence involved to see if they're a fit for me, and I'm a fit for them, right? I learned this one a long time ago, that if you're going to bring me in to do the quote annual training on a Saturday, you're really not committed to leadership development, right? Yeah. Now that's an extreme example, but you get the point. I had a guy a couple of weeks ago say, "Hey, you did a seminar. How come things haven't changed?" I'm like, "Well, have you done the X, Y, and Z that I suggested you do after the seminar?" Right? I noticed that the video that I sent, the reinforcing video that I sent, which we bundle as part of our training, it's no cost. It's just there. I noticed that nobody watched it. Did you actually send it out? Changing culture, leader development takes time, right? And really, I'm not generally in a situation where I'm changing culture. If it's a bad culture, they don't want me or they don't know they need me. I work with good firms and get them to be better. And I work with great firms to help them stay great. Now, that's not arrogance. That's just the reality of it. When you look at quality initiatives and those kinds of things, across manufacturing, actually, where this comes from, people who are good want to get better. People who are bad have no freaking idea, or they don't want to get better. So I'm generally working with folks who clearly understand that they have a need and they clearly understand what they need to do, but they don't know how to do it.
True or false? If you're the owner of a business and they're a great leader, do you typically see other great leaders in the business? Or better said, okay, so that's the first question. Go ahead. I'll let you answer that.
No, you go first.
The other question is, if I'm a bad leader and I own the business, will I have good leaders? The rest of my leaders will be good, or will the rest of my leaders be bad? I guess that's not a true false question, so I didn't really phrase it correctly. But what I'm trying to say is, if I'm a bad leader and I'm at the top, is the rest of my leadership going to be good or probably going to be bad?
I guess it depends on how you define leadership. In my first book, No Yelling, The 9 Secrets of Marine Corps Leadership You Must Know to Win in Business, one of the chapters was make new leaders, right? Leaders make new leaders. So to your point, if they're good, they're creating new ones. Yes, right? But some people have a really hard time letting go. So they may be able to develop a crew and it's phenomenal, but they can't scale that across 5 crews, right? So, textbook answer to what you said, yes, good leaders have good leaders in the organization. The reality of it is there's more to it.
Yeah. Do you think leadership starts at the top?
Yes, but that doesn't mean if there's bad leadership at the top, you can't have good leadership in the ranks. Right. In fact, I don't care what your leadership is at the top. If you're running a crew, you're responsible for the crew, right? So, but yes, yes, I want senior leaders to be role models. And regrettably, I hear it all the time. This would be really good if the boss would do this stuff, right? Yeah. But yes, leadership ideally does start at the top of the organization and cascade down. But then no matter where you are in the organization, if you're running a paving crew of 10 guys, you're the leader of that crew. So that is the top, right?
You bring up a good point, because a lot of people think, leadership is the executive leadership. And, okay, yeah, they're leaders. But I believe and subscribe to the philosophy that everyone's a leader. You're either leading yourself and the talk that you have with yourself every day in your own head, or you're leading yourself, like I said, but other people too, towards a common goal or mission. And I think everyone's a leader. you just develop into different aspects of leadership based on where you are in your experience or progression or time. And that doesn't mean age. I mean, it tends to go with age, but it doesn't have to mean age. But I think when people say, "Oh, I'm not a really good leader, so that's why I just like doing what I'm doing." Well, you're leading yourself no matter what. There's a path you're taking yourself down every single day with every choice you make. And so, do you find that those conversations come up, or do you think that's a philosophy most people agree to, or believe, or see, or what's your thoughts on that?
I think the one about anyone can lead is a phrase that many people hope is true. And you hear it, everybody. And your point about self-leadership is absolutely true. And there's a lot of people that abdicate and push off for a lot of reasons. And that's one of my favorite definitions of leadership. Wish I could tell you where I stole it. Is a leader creates and sustains in somebody the belief that they can do something until they can sustain that belief themselves. A leader creates and sustains the belief in somebody that they can do something until they can sustain that belief themselves. You can do it. No, I can't. You can do it. I can't. You can do it. Well, maybe I can do it. You can do it. I can do it. Right now, that took some time. But let me go back to the craftsman, right? The person who is just really good with his or her tools, right? Yeah. And they're a craftsman, right? And they don't want to lead, right? I just love doing what I do, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Right. And regrettably, we often throw that guy into a leadership position and it goes horribly. Right. Because now a leader creates and sustains somebody the belief that they can do something. Right now, maybe we have an obligation to help that person evolve into that role. But some folks were put on this face of the earth to be a craftsperson, to be an operator, right. To move a multi-ton piece of equipment as if it were, a feather. So we really have to understand that, but that means I have to get to understand my people, get to know my people, have a relationship with my people, which, oh, by the way, takes time. And oh, by the way, 70% of the folks in the organization don't have that in their DNA in the first place.
Yeah, no, it's not. These are skills you can learn. You're not born. Yeah. These are skills that you can absolutely learn and develop. So question, how do you learn and develop those skills then? If that's true, how do you learn and develop those skills?
Well, education, right? So when if I were to do a personality profile on you and say, hey, dude, you're task oriented, and this is really good about that, but here's the things that are really bad about that. And if you want people to take the bullet for you, you need to actually make them feel like they matter. And, obviously I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version, but if I made you feel insignificant, if I did, all right, well, here's basic motivation and in the concept of inclusion, right? Inclusion is you're on my team, right? If I were to, put my arms around the team, right? You're included or you're not. If I include you, you psychologically feel significant. You feel like you matter because I included you. Well, if you feel like you matter, then what I think is important may actually matter to you, right? Because I've made you feel like you matter. But flip it around, you're the new guy and you come onto the job site and everyone's going out for lunch or sitting around having lunch. And we treat you like you're the new guy in a war movie. Like, don't get to know Jablonski. He's going to be dead in 2 days, right? And I hold you at arm's length and keep you on the outside. I make you feel insignificant.
That's right.
Well, how's that for a motivational strategy? And I'll tell you what, Scott, there is no person on the face of the earth that I've ever given that example to that doesn't get it immediately. Because at one point in our life, we were all in or out, right? We were included or excluded. We've all been there, right? So when you put it when I put it in terms like that, right? People get it, right? They're like, oh, that's what leadership is. And oh, by the way, I never said lower the standard.
That's right. You bring up a good point because I think that's how everybody can be a contributor to good leadership and a culture. If you have a culture as the leader at the top, you made a great point. So you made a great point there as an individual, but as a leader at the top, what you want to do as a leader at the top is foster those kind of interactions by speaking and communicating to people. Hey, Jablonski's new, guys. Take him to lunch with you. Don't leave him hanging. Don't assume that he doesn't want coffee or wants one. get them one, include them, bring them on the truck, put them with your best guys that are the most personable. Like, you can do things as a leader. That's good leadership, by creating an atmosphere, an environment where Jablonski, the new guy, which I love, by the way, that name, Jablonski comes on board, and you've given guidance to that. You're setting it off in the right direction versus letting everyone try to figure out what the direction is, like guide it. That's good leadership at the top.
So then extend that, right? So we're in a training session or program with 25 foremen. And I say this, but now the vice president of operations is in the room, or the president comes at the end and says, "Hey, hope you guys had a great time." And then the president is out on the job site at 2 a.m. and he goes, "Hey, Scott, I know you graduated from the leadership program last week. How are you doing with," and he picks a subject from the class, right? That is when you create culture. And by the way, that's a specific example from one of my favorite people in the world, with one of our programs. He goes out there and he talks about it.
Yeah. And the other thing, and I'm curious what your thoughts is, how much of leadership is done by action and how much of it is done with words?
The majority is done with action. I've written 2 books on leadership. One was Marine based and one was construction leadership from A to Z. And I swore to myself that the second one was not going to be like derivative of the first, like, Wally 1.0, Wally 2.0. And I really did everything I could, because many books simply are derivative. And I really said, nothing's going to be the same, right? There's not going to be any content that is the same. Yeah, well, there's a couple of pieces that I couldn't get around. In my Marine book, it was called Set the Example, right? And in A to Z, M is model, as in be a role model. And that actually came from the industry, because I put out a survey and with all these A to Z words, and the industry said model matters. I couldn't give you a percentage, Scott. What I can tell you is up to 70% of the culture of a work group comes from the leader of the work group. Now, the work group could be a crew or a division or something like that. And, so if you don't like what your team is doing, the next place you look is in the mirror, because up to 70% of the culture of that work group is because of what the leader has put in place.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because, again, actions dictate the most leadership, right? So I believe 2 things. If you just come to work every day and you lead with great action and don't communicate anything verbally, you'll have some people follow, and you won't get as much as if you combine the 2. But if you verbally communicate things you want people to do, but your actions are 100% the other direction, no one's going to follow you. People will look at you as disingenuous and not normal. Like, you're just not natural, and it's just not someone I want to follow, because they can see.
We call that a lack of honesty and integrity. That's what that is.
Yeah,
we call it hypocritical. We don't know. You're absolutely right. But to your point about being a role model, that's one philosophy of leadership, right? There's coaching, right? There's watch me get over the wall. There's just putting it out there. You need to get over the wall. There's let me help you get over the wall. Put your foot here, put your foot here. So there's several pieces, and the best leaders would have a little bit of all of that.
Yeah. And to the folks there that are on the team judging the executive leaders or other leaders, I would say, it's very easy to critique the leader. They're a terrible leader. They could do that. They could do this. Yes, granted, no doubt. And some of them justify it. I don't even want to say but, so I'm going to say and. When you, though, are saying you're going to do something in your own head, whether it's show up on time, go early, whatever it is you say you're going to do or know that you should do, but you choose not to, you don't have the right to judge them either. Because if you can't lead your own self to do what you know you should be doing, right or wrong, you don't really get to judge the leader. You're both equally as bad. Just because they have a title that makes them a leader doesn't mean they're any more of a leader or less leader than you.
Yeah, I call it accountability or whatever, but yeah, and isn't that what we want in our employees? We want our employees to be accountable, right? So as a leader, I want to behave and speak in such a way that encourages people to be accountable, then if they're not, well, there's a conversation we have. And it could, like you said, start with an internal dialogue in that person as to why they are or they aren't.
Yeah. So I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit. Two things. There's a lot of issues out there in construction. There always is. It's a complex business and industry. We touched on labor a little bit now already. What other hot topic, real urgent issues are there right now in construction, and what are you seeing out there? And then second part of that question is, what are you seeing folks do to manage that appropriately, and how can they do it better?
Yeah, I usually have a notepad because there's 6 things that went through my mind when you asked the question. First one was supply chain. That's self-explanatory these days. Next one is technology and leveraging technology correctly. Next one, and these are in no order, by the way. Next one is environmental, decarbonization and sustainability and those kinds of things. Next one is the whole DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion thing. And then one near and dear to your heart is cash, because interest rates are in a place we haven't seen them in quite some time. And then you tie that into increasing costs, right? So contractors are more on the edge financially than they've been in quite some time. So take your pick. Which one of those you want to deal with?
Let's pick one that is a little bit people don't like to talk about. Maybe it's uncomfortable. So let's pick DEI. Okay. Yeah. So we're talking about teams. We're talking about leadership. To me, a team and a leadership, a team specifically, is you have a group of people working towards one goal, one purpose, in unison for the betterment of the team. At the end of the day, that's my definition of a team.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just say if we can all agree on that, and we don't have a way to pull our audience here right now, but let's say that's a general philosophy that most people can buy into. What do you think about creating separate groups within your team based on DEI?
Well, let me back up for a second, because people will say, well, Wally, and I'll go, here's my DEI philosophy, right? How are you going to lead and manage people that don't look and act and think like you, right? Because the workforce is more diverse than it's ever been. So you're going to have to lead and manage people who don't look and act and think like you, which means I need to get over some baggage that I've been carrying for 20, 30, 50 years, right? So there's the leadership component to that. To the point about what you talk about, there are reasons. First of all, if you're talking about just creating the team, right, then the team is the team, right? But creating what I'll call support groups or peer groups within the team so that they can commiserate, and maybe. But they've been taken to extreme, whether it's the people of color or the women, right? But what about veterans, right? Each of these constituencies has some unique challenges, and for you to create a forum to support each other so that they can function more effectively out on the job, I have no problem with that. But clearly, some of these groups in some places have become, counterproductive. But if we go back to your point about your definition about, hey, we come together to do something. That's what a team is. If this networking group or support group helps me get people on the job to succeed and be more successful, I'm all for it.
Yeah. So, I don't know let me say it this way. I have a philosophy on this that I've learned over time and years of just being in and out of great teams. I think you can have subsets of teams. Obviously, if you're one large company, I worked in large medical device companies. Yep. There's a marketing team. There's a sales team.
For sure.
We're all going towards one goal. So you can have subsets of teams. However, the difference between those are you have departments of teams. But I think if you create teams that are based purely on someone's skin color, or whether they're a male or a woman, man or a woman, to commiserate with one another, or because you feel like that's the part that makes that group is purely based on something that people were born with from God. I just think that's totally counterproductive to a team and environment. Now, I do think people need support groups, and I think that support group should come from the whole team, and everyone should do that. And that's part of why culture is so important and leadership in that. But I think if you have little groups within so that they can commiserate on each other, but those groups are based on just the color of someone's skin or the fact that they're a man or a woman or they identify as something else, whatever that may be, the whole team should be kind to everybody.
Yeah.
And that's my personal belief. And so I think those teams are actually part of the problem, that even though they probably were created with good intent, I think they're actually creating part of the leadership problem.
Well, and the difference here is, and I think we're saying the same thing, is, operational teams doing work, support groups providing a place. Like the bowling team is a support group, right? You got a bunch of people that don't like to bowl, right? Operational focus as opposed to support group, right? If you're creating teams based on some stereotypical whatever, hell no, right? So yeah, I think we're online with that.
Yeah, because if the thought process is to unite everybody in one mission, but yet part of uniting everyone is to create separate groups underneath that mission, it totally makes no sense and counterproductive. So I would just caution leaders out there. If you're leading a construction force, when you get out when you put your hard hat on and you go out on that construction site, it doesn't matter who you are or what you are. You guys all pay attention. Safety first, look out for your teammate. I mean, nothing about that to complete the mission and the job. Nothing about that should have anything to do with any physical characteristic.
No, regrettably in our society, a lot of this has been, I'll use the word politicized. But, my philosophy is, hey, once we get inside these four walls, as long as it's not illegal, I don't care what you're doing outside the four walls. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So let's go.
Yeah. And because, again, this is for leaders, right? We're talking about leaders. So if you want to lead your team, that's why you're listening to this, especially if you're listening to it this far in. Look, be kind to everyone, but lead by creating an environment that everyone is part of and align them to their team. That doesn't mean you need to include the noise from the TV set or the noise of how someone needs to tell you what to believe. It's your team. You're going to be accountable to it. Your business. Lead everybody as one collective group towards one collective goal. That's what a team is.
So this is where we get to the latest buzzword in my business, and it's called values, right? Yeah. Is there a clearly articulated set of values that have value, i.e. we follow them and people care about them in the organization? Now, it's a buzzword because everybody says this, right? And if you go 20 years ago, every contractor had the same four values: safety, quality, integrity, and customer service. And many of those contractors still have it on their 1999 website template. Separate issue. So I think we're seeing a revitalization or a rebirth or a 2.0, 3.0 of values in business, but values in construction, where we've moved from safety, quality, integrity, customer service to my own words. Right now, integrity could be, hey, we deal direct, or we do what we say, but it's more than four buzzwords that there's some substance and depth added to these things. And then we train on them and we align the entire organization, because I cannot assume that your definition of integrity and customer service is the same as my definition of integrity and customer service. Now, we can certainly hope that but you and I come from a different place, right? You grew up economically disadvantaged. I grew up economically advantaged. You're not a college grad. You're not even a high school grad. I'm an MBA, right? Whatever, right? So and this is where diversity gets us in trouble, right? Because we come in the room and go, well, we're all going to be the same. Well, we're not all the same. We all have different backgrounds, but we can, quote, align around the values, but you have to train to the values. Right. You have to explain what those mean, and you have to make them real. And that takes time. And well, why do I have to train what integrity is? They should just know that. Well, not necessarily.
No, why would they?
Well, if they grew up in my home, they would have the same values, but they didn't.
Right.
Scott, you didn't grow up in my home, right? So it seems like this stupid step we have to take. It's one of the most important steps we have to take.
I agree. Well, you and I can beat that section up. I think we did a good job of that. Let me move to a different one. You mentioned technology as a big. Talk to me about the technology that's in and around construction today. When should it be used versus regular human beings? How does it help the humans that are in your organization? Like, what problems does it solve? Where are you seeing tech? And just in general, you mentioned technology. So I guess broad question, but just give us an overview of how technology in construction can and should be used, and et cetera.
Well, I think we're going through a generational shift in that the technology associated with bandwidth and computing power really has gotten really freaking good. However, if you have crappy processes, i.e. the fundamentals of your business aren't very good, all you're going to do with technology is do crappy stuff faster. So automation for the sake of automation, right? But here's what happened 10, 15 years ago. Let's use this as an example. You and I are on a Zoom call. And if we had tried to do this 5 years ago with a construction audience, would have been really hard to do because they're like, how the hell do you do that? Right. I got a Skype account. But bandwidth has gotten better. And facility ease of use has gotten better. 2 hours ago, I was on a call and I had 5 foremen across the country sitting in pickup trucks on their iPads, and we were doing a lunch and learn, right? So the technology has gotten so much better. However, there's a lot of scar tissue, right? From 5, 10, 15 years ago of, we tried that and that didn't work. Yeah, well, it works better now. You need to give it a try. So if you don't have a robust IT strategy, to include social media, by the way, which may be a communication strategy, you're going to be left behind. Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. And again, think about this in technology world. I was thinking about marketing and technology, and we've done some podcasts, webinars. We've brought people on. If you're a subcontractor or a general contractor and you're trying to present yourself out there, we all know what the stigmatisms are or stigmas around construction are. Whether you show up on time or don't, the quality of your work. Oh, I'm a plumber. They're going to show up at my house with the plumber's crack. All the stuff that people think. What if you were out there showing people in real ways with video, with your words, with pictures and actions of your work and the quality of it? Like, hey, by the way, when we put something in the ground, this is how we put it in the ground. Let me show you how we level this pipe. Let me show you how we make sure we do this, because you're not just showing up after you pour dirt all over it, but you got out there on the images why you did it that way, why it matters, and you're showing that. Do you think those contractors, developers aren't going to look at that and call you first versus somebody else? I mean, yes. You're telling your story.
My Toyota dealer does it.
Yes.
Right. Before he pulls off that piece, he sends me a picture of it and says, this is what it looks like. Now, I may or may not know what I'm looking at, right? But my Toyota dealer has it figured out, right? Why can't you, right? I mean, there's an entire strategy out there by a guy by the name of Marcus Sheridan called They Ask, You Tell. They being the customers, you being the supplier. And he says, put it all out there. Put it all out there. And that's what you see in a lot of my content online, and yours too, about we're putting out information. Our content is not selling anything. It's providing information. If you want to give me a call and talk about it, that's free, no charge, right? But we're trying to educate folks, right? Sure. And there's no secrets, right? And you're right that for the marketing aspect, for client acquisition, it's huge, but marketing for employee acquisition, it's huge as well.
Yeah. BuildWitt is a cool company around construction. They do a great job. And when I saw a post by Aaron Witt, and so if you guys don't know who Aaron Witt is, please go follow that. And Aaron, I know you're not on the show, maybe you're watching or not, but I'm just giving you props to this right now. He put something out there yesterday or 2 days ago I saw, and it was, everybody's going to have a story. They're going to talk some junk. They're going to say bad things. They may say good things. And you know what? If, Wally, you're out there all the way, putting stuff out there, showing people who you are, and someone comes across and just doesn't like it, and they happen to be talking to their neighbor or whatever, and they're like, yeah, Wally's a jerk, man. I hate Wally. He's a big a-hole, whatever, this, that, the other. He's an MF'er, not the good kind either.
Yeah.
But those other people are like, well, I know Wally. Actually, read some of Wally's. I don't have that impression. It ends there. That's their opinion. Boom. But if that's a trusted person of theirs, a friend, they don't know you, Wally, but they just talked about you. And you're not out there, and the next person, for all they know, you call them up one day and you guys bump past because it is a small world. They automatically are going to remember that you're an a-hole and an MF'er, and you're overcoming that for which you didn't even know you are overcoming it.
Yeah.
And so it's important to go tell that story, especially in a world with construction where stories are told and broad brushes are painted across the whole industry, construction, contractors, plumbers, subs, GCs, doesn't matter, including GCs. If you're a GC and you're out there, subs are going to think you don't pay well.
Right.
Well, you should show pictures of how you just received a check from your owner and you're paying all the subs today.
Yeah.
I'd want to bid your jobs, and in a labor market where a bunch of subs don't want to work for the right folks. I mean, there you go. So I think it's exactly the story to tell, to your point.
Well, and the marketing thing, and there's a technology component to it, but it's a whole strategy thing as well. The concept of our work speaks for itself is crap, right? It does not speak for itself. The people who speak for their work and what BuildWitt, Build WITT, and I've collaborated with those guys on some things. What they have done is they have created an industry around marketing of construction services. And you go on LinkedIn now, and I can name 5 off the top of my head of people that are involved in, quote, marketing construction services. And how many of your clients have a marketing department, a marketing consultant, or a social media person? And we're seeing you, the industry, and you can outsource some of this stuff, right? But if you're not telling your story, it will get told for you.
That's right. That is the name of it. That is the exact point. Yeah. Supply chain issues and cash, of course, those are some big issues. I think everyone's kind of ham and egging their way around supply chain. A lot of that is out of our control, but I'd be remiss. You talk to lots of different companies. So is there anything specific you've seen has worked really well with supply chain, managing that, handling that, the pricing of it, getting it? I mean, what have you seen? Is there a golden nugget out there or two?
Yeah, I think the golden nugget is agility and being able to first, creating vendor relationships where you may have more than 1 or 2 options. Now, clearly in some things that's not possible. And it's too late to start that today, but it's not too late to start that for tomorrow, right? So building some flexibility into your supply chain. I think we're seeing that across the board, but just mental agility, right? I've tried A, I've tried B. Well, I'm going to create C, I'm going to create D, I'm going to create E. And construction organizations by nature, although it's a dynamic environment, they're not necessarily agile, right? They tend to be stuck in old ways. And a lot of people are going to push me on that. But, means and methods do evolve, but often only if prescribed by the owner. So mental agility. But if I'm task focused, it's tough to have mental agility because I'm not thinking beyond the task.
Yeah. No, you make a good point with that. And look, a construction project is a big, complex thing. It's done one task at a time. So there's nothing wrong with being task oriented. Matter of fact,
you have to be
really well. Yeah. Just the awareness, though, that there's times where you need to have some mental agility. The fact that you can be aware of that, maybe I need to be thinking like that way, will help serve you really well. It doesn't mean you have to become an expert at mental agility, but just be aware that you'll need it, I think, is a key point you're making.
And depending on where you are on the food chain, right? So if I'm a superintendent, a foreman, 2 days out, superintendent, 2 weeks out, project manager, 2 months out, president, 2 years out. If my president is looking at cost reports, he's doing the wrong thing. And and I know that there's a lot of presidents looking at cost reports because you deal with them and you're like, I don't know if I want to give this guy money.
Yeah, no, if you're on a job site as the president in a business that's evolved, not brand new, and you're, driving the truck. Okay. And if you're there for show, just to show the guys, the new crew that you can do it, great. But if you're there because you're actually trying to do that work, I mean, something's wrong.
You're the most overpaid guy we got.
Yeah, exactly. And cash. What do you see people doing to make it cash work on these projects?
Well, the first thing we have to go back is to the classic E myth, the entrepreneur's myth, right? That I was a great doer, so I'm going to go do it myself. My boss is an idiot, so I'm going to go do it myself. And people go out and they're not business people, right? I see this in the speaking industry too. People don't understand margin. They don't understand profit. They understand putting the lights on, but what they do is they take a salary instead of build a business, right? So, well, let me give you this one. If I were standing in front of a bunch of construction foremen and say, what's the average net profit of companies like ours? We should all know that that's a single digit number, often under 5%, maybe in the 4% range these days across all trades. The average number you would see from a room of commercial construction foremen these days is 16%. Well, if our primary production resource thinks we're making 16% when we're only making 4%, there's a disconnect from an education perspective, right? Yeah. So there's a lack of education, there's a lack of financial acumen, there's a lack of business savvy, generically across the industry. And I suspect that's why you run into a lot of folks looking for money, because of that lack of acumen and savvy. We take the best doers and hey, I'm going to do it myself and create my own company. This is where leadership comes in. This is where delegation comes in. This is where use of functional staff comes in. So, and do people understand the velocity of cash, right? That says, if I can increase my accounts receivable from 45 days to 40 days, what does that really mean to my organization? Right. Because what that really says is you're financing the owner or whoever's not paying you. Right. And people don't get that. And I don't know, maybe that's maybe a little harsh, but the money side better than I do. But what I can tell you is my experience, particularly on the smaller end, when I'm dealing with the big guys, this isn't an issue, but understanding profitability at the crew level remains an issue. Oh, but I don't want people to know how much I make. Right. Look, dude, it's your name on the side of the truck. They're going to respect you either way. How about you explain to them that you made 2% on that job?
Yeah. And by the way, contrary to popular belief, nobody wants to work. Let me phrase it the right way. People want to work for winners. Okay. Yeah. They want to know they're working on a job site and winning. They don't want to know they're working for a job site for some guy that's losing. Yeah. Okay? And don't be afraid that you made money. Like, okay, yeah, we made money. But the worst thing you can happen is we're making money. Someone thinks you're making 4 times the amount of money you're making is a catastrophic failure, because now you're being judged like you're living at 4x what you actually are doing. And so you gotta make sure your key management folks know, hey man, our budget on this job is X. We talk a lot about taking project managers and superintendents and blending them with your accounting team if you're large enough to do that. But if not, make sure, most importantly, what we're saying is make sure your project manager knows exactly what that budget is. They know what their line items are on that. They know that what an extra day at this phase means to the profitability of the project. Have routine meetings with that. So they're making good decisions. They're not going to just run off to Home Depot and grab 5 extra things when they really only need 3, just because if they don't feel like going back, like they'll know, you know what I mean? Like they'll do the right thing, but you have to empower them. You can't just tell them and hope it works. You want to share that info. I think you make a great point there.
And if they'd really done their short interval schedule correctly, they would have gotten it from your own warehouse and not gone to the Home Depot, which would have had an even more of a cost savings. That's right. So yeah, there's a lot in there, but here's one of my favorite phrases. One of the biggest problems we have with people in construction is they like to build things. Well, if you like to build things, then put a lathe in your garage. But this is a business of construction, which means you have to understand cost. That's right. And oh, by the way, as a business owner, if you're afraid about sharing dollars, I respect that. It's your name on the side of the truck. Then share units. We thought we were going to do 500 yards. We did 50 yards. We got to get a whole bunch more tomorrow, or we're going to be working the weekend. Information is power. So how about we empower our people?
Yeah. You speak of cash flow. We see it all the time. Yes, 100%. Big picture wise, you want to know if you're stepping on a job. You want to know what your real margin is. You want to know your velocity of cash. You want to know how much cash are you investing into that project in order to actually make the margin you anticipate. And when do you make that? one of the things we did for education is we built a cash flow tool. And then we put it on our website for free. And why did we do that? Because I feel sickened when I talk to a customer that says, "Oh my gosh, I wish I knew you guys X amount of years ago. I just lost $700,000 on that job or $4 million on that job." That's a conversation I had this week. I lost $4 million on that job. Why did they lose it? They didn't bid it. They didn't understand how much cost was in it. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. They knew the cost. They didn't understand how quickly it was going to be spent. And what they ended up having to do is they didn't realize they had to invest 5 times the amount of money they thought they did. And then they had to go borrow cash, which ate up all their money and margin. And then they ended up doing a job for free with all that extra risk. And so we took the cash flow tool and put it right on our website. Anybody can use it. We don't market to you. We take your email, we email it to you, but you can fill that tool out 100 times a day for every one of your projects. And we deliver to you a very specific spreadsheet that is a cash flow tool. It tells you exactly when you're going to be cash flow positive, what your costs are, how much cash you need to invest, and then they can go make the decisions on how they want to manage to that. And we, of course, can help them, but we can also be a source of lending. But more importantly, it's just a cash flow tool. It's there for them to know exactly how to run that job. So they're going in eyes wide open.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, it's that kind of information that we need to get out there more. And it's the acumen that, people can now make better business decisions, right? So cool. Love it.
Yeah. Well, Wally, I know we're running up on our time, and I wanted to know, is there anything you have that you want to add or we didn't touch on that you would love to make sure we do, or questions or anything at all?
We've covered a lot of ground, and I think the broad thing today is that things are happening that have never happened before. We are seeing challenges we've never seen before. And it doesn't mean we're doomed. It just means we need to get a little smarter. There are suppliers and supporters and consultants. I'm here. Give me a call. I'm like your cash flow tool. Give me a call. I love having those conversations. If you want me, you'll buy me. That's a separate issue, right? I love what I do. I love who I'm doing it with, and I hope to continue to be doing it for a long time.
I love it. So everybody, I thank you very much for joining Wally and I. Wally, thank you so much for being our guest. We'll put up where you can find Wally here on the bottom of the podcast so you guys can see this. But you can see and find Wally on LinkedIn, and you can also go to constructionleadership.com where you can find any and all of Wally's content. You can reach out to Wally directly. He's happy to speak to you. And everybody, I will say thank you very much for joining us on the Real MF'ers podcast. Wally, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thanks.
I really appreciate you, man.
Thanks, man.
You. All right, everybody, have a great day. Appreciate it. Take care.